Hey everybody, and welcome back to Keeping It Real with Tiff and Carl. I'm Carl Rabun,
I am Tiff Salcido.
and we are fully smack dab in the middle of fall, and
Yeah, we are.
yeah, and it's weird. I mean, the weather be changing, the weather times be changing, weather be changing, but it's I don't know, up here in Sac sometimes I'll also still get a cold morning. It's not quite hoodie season. Like I find myself sweating a little bit in my hoodie if I have it on like towards the middle of the day. The morning I can wear it, but I can't have it on in the afternoon. And so I'm just waiting. They had some rain while I was gone. I was in Ventura the last couple days, right? And had some rain. So hopefully it's gonna maybe bring in some more of that chill weather so I can be comfortable in myself in my hoodie collection, right? So I don't know. How about
So
you,
your
Tiff?
legs don't get humid. So your
Yeah,
legs don't get humid.
yeah, I'm not
Sorry,
like
I just always remember that. That's my favorite thing.
what's that I get humid? Yeah,
That your
I'll
legs
sweat.
get humid. I think that's hilarious. I will never forget that.
My legs, my arms. Oh, it's ridiculous. I'm a sweaty beast. So, um, but I'm just waiting for it, to be able to bundle up because I like to bundle, right? And I don't.
Hmm
I mean,
hmm
when it's too hot, I don't get to bundle. I like to layer, to wrap, to cover myself in comforters and things like that. And when it's too hot, we have to change our bed sheets. It's ridiculous. So I don't know.
Yeah, can't relate. I have still perfect weather. So,
Yeah.
we've had we've been in like the 80s, nice enough where we don't have to have the AC on, but still warm enough. Like in the afternoon, it gets a little toasty and you have to have the fans on turbo because it's pretty hot. But it's been nice here. We're expecting some rain this week. So that will be interesting. And the lows at night are going to get all the way in the 50s, which is amazing. Amazing. So I'm pretty excited about that. But it's been quite pleasant, very pleasant. Sunshine, a little bit of clouds here and there, but I'm living my best lizard life. I'm saying lizard because I love the heat. I love the warm. And this is the perfect amount of warm. I even took my coffee outside on the patio this morning and sat in the sun a bit. Got some of that morning sun to, you know, help me grow as a person. I'm not sure what it does, but it felt good to sit outside and marinate in the vitamin D. I'll tell you what, good
Yeah.
times.
Yeah. Like, just to start to toast a little bit. Not too dark, just a little brown, right? Just so that it's
Right.
warm. So, when you spread the butter, it kind of melts into the bread, right?
Exactly.
Okay.
Exactly.
Gets
It was
the
perfection.
gets the juices
And
flowing.
yeah, for sure. But I was in the Bay Area a few weeks ago. We didn't really get to talk about this the last time we met because we had Koi here and we wanted to give her, all the time. Just conversation. I love Koi. So I spent a couple of weeks up in the Bay Area. I was in Monterey for like 4 or 5 days, and then I was in Oakland and then San Francisco. And the weather, of course, is very different from where I live at. So it was pretty nice to wear like pants, and I even had to take a jacket because it gets a little frisky at night if you've been there. But it was also unseasonably warm there, which, was fine. But forget how much I love the city and I forget how much I love like the Bay Area. So we did the 17-mile drive. Um, we did the 17-mile drive, which I'd never ever done before. And I have to just admit, it was absolutely beautiful. And I can tell you that the divide between the haves and the have-nots was very, very apparent in the 17-mile drive. Because I had just come from, the announcement that, people weren't getting their CalFresh benefits and, the people weren't going to have access to food. The most vulnerable populations weren't going to have access to food, but yet on the 17-mile drive, I cannot tell you how many multi-million dollar manors were being renovated and constructed and facelifted, and I think what caught me um I think that what was the most interesting kind of like observation for me is, again, 17, the coast in Monterey is just gorgeous. It's so beautiful. It's so awe-inspiring. It's so immaculate. And yet in this space that belongs to the people, it should belong to the people, um, were just signs of private property, misdemeanor if, here. Don't take a picture of that tree. You could take a picture of that tree for your personal enjoyment, but it's a copywritten tree, so you can't use that tree for anything but your own personal enjoyment. And I'm like, when do we put property rights on like a tree? Right? That picture of that tree belongs, the image of this tree belongs to this company. I'm like, I'm pretty sure that tree wasn't planted for your personal benefit. It was wild to me. It was wild. So I mean, again, I had a good time viewing it. I probably would never do it again, but it just the ownership of such beauty was really disappointing to me as a human being. I really didn't like that part of it. Kind of gross, to be honest with you.
Yeah, and then
But yeah,
yeah, my wife and I
go ahead.
we were there,
Hmm.
in the spring, and she'd never been. So yeah, you're right. It's gorgeous, but it's also it's definitely very Tony, and it's just I don't know, a monument to, American capitalism, and just even driving through Pebble Beach, and we walked around Pebble Beach, and just some of the shops in Pebble Beach were just, I mean, gorgeous stuff, but I mean, that have to take a second mortgage out to be able to
Yeah,
afford some of the stuff in there, right? So it was
yeah,
it was definitely a refresher on, like you said, the haves and have-nots, right? So I hear you. But go ahead,
yeah.
continue. What else after?
So then I went to Oakland, and Oakland has definitely looks a lot different today than it did a few years ago. A few years ago, it was pretty apocalyptic, to for lack of any better word. It looked really, really bad in Oakland, but um it's shifting, and there's many reasons for that. Some are good and some are nefarious, but nonetheless, it's definitely a different Oakland than it was maybe a few years ago, which was good to see. And then in San Francisco, it was just great as well. Very different. I mean, I you still see, some of the most vulnerable people out and about. I did see a gentleman just completely like curl like a roly poly. I'm sure he was high on fentanyl, and you watched him go from like standing straight up to just curled all
Yeah,
the way down to the sidewalk. It was just really devastating to watch and to see, and know there's not much you can do to help. Um, so that was kind of crappy, like that part of it. But on the other beautiful side of San Francisco, the other part of it, because there's always this equilibrium of good and bad with anywhere that you go. um, I got to go see my Depeche Mode movie, which was a concert film. I got to see it in the Roxy Theater, and it was on Halloween Eve. So everybody was out in costumes, and just the vibes were immaculate. And I'm sure the Mission District is just full of different ethnicities, and the food is various. And so we got to go um, enjoy a bit of walking around and trying some different foods in the Mission District, and a couple drinks while I was on my Depeche Mode high, living my best life. It was pretty amazing. So I had a good run in the Bay. So thanks Bay Area for having me. I'll see you soon because I'm going back next month. So yeah.
very cool. So where did you eat in San Francisco? Did you find a place to eat lunch? Because I know where you were training.
Yes. So I didn't go to the usual places. I actually went to a liquor store called the That's It Market. The That's It Market. And I went to it because I think you might remember, I have a slight obsession with Anthony Bourdain.
Yeah.
Um, and so I watched an episode of one of his shows, No Reservations or something like that, where he was in San Francisco. and he ate at this That's It Market. It's like this torta that's like he's a good hangover food. I didn't have a hangover, but I still wanted to go there. But it's a torta that has like grilled chicken, like really super thin grilled chicken milanesa, like very thin. And then it also has ham, hot dogs, eggs, lettuce, tomato, avocado, crema, like just the jalapenos, like the whole, and this thing is huge. So I ate half of a half. I ended up having to share because it was just way too big. But it was quite an experience to say. And it's just like this little hole in the wall gas station or liquor store, I should say. It's not a gas station. They don't have gas, but um it was great. It was amazing. And never in a million years would I be like, you know what I really want? I want a chicken, hot dog, ham, egg, whatever else is on their sandwich. But it was actually quite nice. And so that's where we ate. I was just there for the one day. And then I don't remember where we ate. I know we ate dinner in the Mission District the other night. We found a little because I stayed in Nob Hill, and so I found like this little hole in the wall like deli diner thing right there in Nob Hill. I can't remember the name of it, but that was nice as well. Um, it was good. It was great. I love the city. And I got my beef patisserie, which is my favorite thing about the city. I never go into San Francisco without stopping at beef patisserie and getting some pastries because they're phenomenal. They're the best thing in the whole universe. Just throwing it out
Very
there.
nice. Very, very cool. Well, sounds like you had a good time. Shoot. So
I
how are
did.
the open folks? Did they ask you about
They did.
your
They asked
they
me
did.
about the pineapple in they were like, what was it? Pineapple on pizza? I said, that's acceptable. But pineapple in a carrot cake. No,
Yeah.
it was great. They were such a great group. I really enjoyed them. And it was ironic because I was not ironic, that's not the right word, but it was I had a bit I had a bit of trepidation going in because one of the classes I was teaching was about how government funding works. And you're going in to talk about how government funding works to a group of people who are directly impacted by the government shutdown, and trying to explain how funding goes from how it's appropriated in the federal government to the states to the local level when none of that is working the way it's supposed to right now. Was kind of a rough gig, to say. I earned my paycheck that day, let me tell you, but I also had to be really honest. This is how it's supposed to work. But anytime you're dealing with politics and politicians, just know it's but I use it as an opportunity to talk about the importance of being civically responsible and participating in elections. And again, who you vote for is your business, but you can't opt out of voting because who's in office has a direct impact on everybody.
Yeah.
So we have to make good decisions at a local, state, federal level. So
Yeah.
I use it as an opportunity to get them engaged in the process. So that was fun.
Yeah, that group's awesome. It's I get to see them again on Monday, so I'm excited to hang out with
Lucky.
them again. Yeah, yeah, they're cool people. So this program in Alameda County works with folks who are recipients, but also they've been chosen to go through an on-the-job training program. And at the end of
Mhm.
the program, they have county jobs, right? And so, there's a lot of folks who are they're all super capable and dedicated and excited. Some of them are a little rough around the edges, but it's definitely something that you can see why they were chosen to represent Alameda County with their folks. And so it's there was a couple folks from other countries, right? And I don't know, one person, he was super excited about talking about how he set up an entire program of communication and technology while when he lived in Afghanistan for this college. And he was, you could see him just blow up with pride and what he accomplished. And it always just made me think about, wow, look at you, you're an engineer, and you come to this country, and you have to start all over. And
Mhm.
it really was, you know um something that, that perspective is really, it's great to be able to do that. I love doing. I've done that like the last 3 or 4 years, and it really is something that I love to do. I look forward to seeing him again on Monday. So yeah.
Yeah. I would like to point out that three of the people in this class have PhDs,
Yes.
three of them, and in like civil engineering and
Yes.
these really and they cannot. So for all the people who look down on immigrants, three people with PhDs who've studied and done miraculous work that the United States doesn't recognize their education, and they're basically not allowed to use their gifts here. And I was watching. So when I was engaging with them, I would notice them writing things down and looking things up. And so I was chatting with them, and English is a really complicated language. I talk fast. I use, sometimes some jargon, like I forget what was there was a phrase I used that they would ask me, can you tell me what this means? And I would like have to give them a little bit of background on some of our colloquialisms and phrases that we use. But one of the gentlemen told me how because I was there for 2 days. He's like, the first half of the first day, I didn't understand almost anything of what you said. He says, because you have an accent, which is funny because nobody ever thinks they have an accent, but
Yeah.
everybody has one. So he says, I couldn't pick up on your accent in the beginning. And then I picked up on it, and I could translate. He's like, I understood about 60 to 70% of what you're saying. And he says, and I speak six languages. I speak six languages, but English is really challenging. I said, it absolutely is. And I don't think enough people appreciate how complicated the English language is. And I mean, I see it. I've been on this empathy tour here with my gringo friends here in Mexico because, they're not necessarily speaking Spanish.
Yeah.
And I said, like, isn't it complicated for you when you're trying to speak the native language and it's just you just aren't getting it? And one of the guys was like, yeah, but I went to school and I learned all the words, but then in conversation, it's so hard to speak. I said, absolutely. And Spanish is not even the hardest language to learn. So could you imagine what that feels like for people who are trying to learn English? And he's like, oh, I never really thought of it that way. I said, we have to have empathy. I mean, we have to have empathy. I try to be empathetic. Um, and not that I'm always good at it, but it's complicated,
Yeah.
right? And I just
Yeah.
feel so bad for these very accomplished gentlemen that have so much education, so much experience, and they're not seen as equals. That's devastating.
Yeah. No, absolutely.
Devastating.
We take for granted how difficult it is to know the difference between here, here, and here, right? Or where
Right.
and where, or
Right.
there, and there, right? And so,
Right.
yeah, I think what they say that English and Mandarin are the two
Hmm.
languages that seem to be the most difficult to master, right? So, but
Yeah.
it is all a
I can
matter
see
of
that.
of want and need, and
Hmm.
I hope they're going to be fine. I mean, like I said, I really enjoy those folks, and when we give them a chance to shine, we were talking about our accents too, and a couple of the girls in the class were like, yeah, I can't believe I never thought I had an accent, and someone told me I had an accent. I'm like, yeah, then I hear you, me too. So yeah,
Yep.
so
That's it.
so Tiff, I have in my hot little hands a
Ooh. Ooh.
question of the week. All right. And question is, what activity do you enjoy so much that it makes you lose track of time?
Ooh. Um, dare I say running these streets? I gosh, that's such a hard question. So, cooking is one, although it's funny, I enjoy cooking so much, but I'm very, very aware of the time because a lot of things are on time. But I would say just like being out and about, and exploring being out exploring where you're just kind of lost in the moment. I think that would be the one thing because I'll be like, oh my gosh, it's already 9 o'clock. We got to go home. Or, oh man, it's been 4 hours. We got to go let the dog out. So I think exploring and talking to people and just being out and about is where I lose track of time. Sometimes I forget, like even at work when we're doing classes and maybe there's a conversation or a break, well, not even a breakout room, but um, like little table talks and stuff. And so I'll go start chatting with the table and then I forget I'm at work, or I forget that, oh shoot, I told them 5 minutes and it's been 10 minutes. Let me come back. So I think it's engagement. When I'm really engaged in a conversation, I completely lose all track and sense of time for sure. What about you, Carl? What do you lose track of time with?
Well, yeah, in a class, just having that conversation, and I have specific breaks or when we're hitting things, but sometimes if it's a good conversation, I want
Yeah.
to keep it going, or all of a sudden I'll chase a squirrel and want to tell a story related to that conversation, right? And
Yeah.
so it's definitely something I have to keep track of. But just at home, you know, um, these damn games and
Oh,
games, and your phone, right? And so I I don't have the latest video games, right? Because I stopped buying video games because I recognized how much time I was spending on them and not doing, working for yourself. You have to, it's great to have stuff come in and know what you need to do, but then there's also things you got to hustle on, right? I got half a website, right? And, you know, and classes that I could create if I just finish this game of Aces Up on Pogo, right? And once I finish, oh, I lost. All right, I'm gonna finish it up. Okay, I won. Oh, I just need one more little, plane in the thing to get to the next level, right? And so I recognize that need, to accomplish that. And once I get into
hmm
that mode, I the other stuff I need to accomplish just isn't that important, right? And so,
right.
and the same thing if I'm accomplishing something, I'm building a class or whatever, I'll go and go and go until I'm done, and it'll be 2 or 3 o'clock in the morning. And it's just like, if I would have started earlier, if I would have maybe started, a couple days ago and done a little bit by a little bit, but I get enraptured by, these, like I said, the apps, the games, and it's something that draws me in. And I recognize that they're intended to do so, right? They're intended to do that, right?
Right.
And it's that same, dopamine receptor, right? That releases those chemicals that make us feel like we accomplished something every time we pass a level, or defeat the big boss, or score a touchdown on Madden, or whatever else it is that people are doing. Like I said, I don't have video games because I like to stay married, right? But at the same time, it's those little things. So I mean, I've deleted, my games account. I bought a year's worth, and I'm like, you know what? I don't need it. Just delete it, get rid of it, right? Out of sight, out of mind. There's other things I can be doing with my time, right? And I'm not saying you shouldn't relax, because it's important to
Right.
relax,
Right.
and but I have plenty of things I do to relax, right? I do have those daily games that I play, but then also, I I'm in a fantasy football league, fantasy basketball league. I'm in two bands, right? I have plenty of outlets, right? What is it that what's the best use of my time? And
hmm
so it's
hmm
something that I recognize, if I allow myself to go down that hole, I'm not really doing the things that I need to do. And like I said, there's plenty of stuff that I can do to enjoy my time. I don't have to, be locked into a game that at the end of the day isn't counting towards something. So it's very easy to lose track of time with that.
Do you know that they purposely design if you have a super hard level, that the next level is almost always incredibly easy to help you process your frustration?
Yeah.
So I always think about
Yeah.
that. Like there's a couple games, like I like Royal Match. I don't play a lot of games, but
Yeah.
every once in a while I'll get on Royal Match because it's, calm, relaxing, whatever you want to call. Actually, and usually if I'm watching TV. So if I'm watching TV, I can't just watch TV. I watch TV and play a game on my phone. So um sometimes I get stuck on a level for a while and I always notice the next one is super simple. And I'm like, that's right, I'm on a roll. But that's what keeps you playing. Because if it was hard level after hard level after hard level, you'd probably quit. So I think that's
You're tired.
interesting. The way we get roped in.
You don't want to go to sleep hearing the king say, "Oh," right?
Yeah, exactly. I don't know if he makes noises because I have it always have it on silent.
Oh, okay.
I
Yeah,
don't know
no,
when
because I,
I don't play any games with noises. I don't like noises.
oh no, yeah, me neither. But I mean, when I used to play Words with Friends, right? They used to
Mm,
always have the Royal Match commercial, right? After you make a move, which is why I don't play Words with Friends anymore. I don't want to deal with commercials. And it shows you a level of Royal Match and you hear, oh, or whatever else it is where when you fail. So it's anyway, so
that's funny.
that's my connection to Royal Match. But just thinking about that idea of accomplishment, right? So accomplishing that level, accomplishing the next level. So rebuild your esteem and your feeling of competence and right. Those are all things that release that dopamine that help you to feel like you're actually accomplishing something worthwhile. It lifts up your attitude and your mood, right? And so that's a real thing. And it's funny how much I'm not a doom scroll. I don't have a TikTok account, and I at the
Mhm.
same reason, because I'm not sitting there trying to watch videos all day. My wife will send me TikTok videos and I can't watch them. So, but so she'll come out and show me, but,
Right.
I recognize, there's things that um we can just, the doom scrolling effect and how much, time you spend on your phone looking at your phone during the day and it can really be distracting, right? And unnecessarily, right? And so, there's other things that can distract us very easily, right? I mean, the average American, I think, is distracted 2.5 hours a day at work, right? So they're
Mhm.
not as productive at work for, you know, an entire, between break and lunch, So it's a challenge. It's a challenge to get away from that. And we didn't have that. I was listening to a podcast the other day and there's folks my age, so the good old days, right? But they were talking about the challenge of um how electronics maybe keep people or having so many different options for entertainment. It's keeping people from writing and reading, right? And they
Mhm.
were telling stories. There were two folks who wrote books, and they were telling stories about how they wrote their books. And one of them said, "I was just bored at night, and I was in my room and and in my house, and I just started typing because I was bored, right? And I didn't have anything to think about. I couldn't just look at my phone and look at those things. That wasn't something I was going to get. I had to wait for the newspaper or you know whatever it was." And so he was just thinking there's so many distractions out there. It's keeping people from maybe achieving things that they would have, not that they even know that they want to, but that they would have before, just being able to have everything at your fingertips, right? So,
Yeah.
it was just an interesting conversation on that, you know. And there's so many different outlets and avenues for people to be creative, right? And people can, be influencers and they can, create, apps and live in that virtual space and it brings them joy and accomplishment and some people make a great living off of it and that's fantastic, you know but just thinking about those, what happened when we didn't have those, what were people doing, right?
Mhm.
I haven't, I don't, I honestly I don't know when's the last time I read a book, right? I think I read a book um maybe 7 years ago, right? But that doesn't mean I
Oh
don't
wow.
listen to I listen to books,
Right.
right? I listen to books. I read excerpts, online, right? I have a Kindle reader. I'll read those, right? But in terms of an actual physical book, right? I have not read one from cover to cover in quite a while, and I have a whole library of books that I was just, I'm a voracious reader. I love history. I love autobiographies. I love, learning about people, neuroscience, all those wonderful things. And I can get all of that online or, virtually or through an audiobook, right? And
Mhm.
that's it's replaced the idea of actually looking at a physical book. And it's just interesting, that some of the things that we used to do or that I used to love doing, I found other avenues of doing it. And maybe, I don't know, is that good or bad, or is it just is, right?
It just is. It just is, you know. I still prefer a book, a physical book. I don't engage the same way when I read it online, and I'm not an auditory learner, so I can't stay connected enough. I like to hold a physical book, and I like to buy my books and not like borrow them from the library because I like to write in them and take notes and put questions and I read every book like I'm writing a book report on it. So I really prefer, and so um I almost always have a book that I'm reading, but it's when I read is really dependent. I may start a book and then put it down and then finish it 7 months later. So I don't have like a daily reading habit. I have lots of books that I have half read right now that I start them, I'm really into them, and then I forget about them. But I'm always inspired. There's always something maybe that inspires me. I really tried to do audiobooks. I like to have like background noise. So I thought to myself, oh, I'll just put an audiobook and listen to it, when I'm getting ready or whatever. No, it doesn't work for me. And that's why, to, I always think to each their own. What works for me may not work for you. What works for you may not work for me. There's lots of different ways to get benefits. It doesn't have to be there's options. It doesn't have to be one way. There's lots of options.